Good morning, everybody. We have made it to the final week of the spring term. Can you believe it? Where did that go? Just feels like New Year. But we are heading into spring, and I hope you marked the spring equinox on the weekend, Saturday, the official start of spring, and there are wonderful hosts of golden daffodils everywhere. And we have some photographs sent in. So the first two came in from Bibi and in upper 3. Now, if you look closely at this cloud photo, she said, can you see the two ducks? They look like little rubber ducks at the top of the clouds there. If you look closely, you will see the duckies emerging. And she also sent me a photo that she took, rainbow, from her car. There we go. So thank you, Bibi. But did you see this in the sky on Saturday afternoon? Did you hear a very loud noise, a sonic boom? And did you see a flash of light in the sky? They think they're analysing the data, but it could have been a meteorite, a fireball flashing through the sky, that people in Dorset and the southwest saw and heard and felt. There was a tremor and a sonic boom, so quite exciting there. If you spotted that, that could have been something very significant. So the scientists are analysing the data and looking at that closely to see what actually happened. Now, we start this morning with a musical interlude, and Isabel in upper 3 has played this beautiful piece for us. Let's have a watch. Oh, well done, Isabel. And thank you to the masked dancers. Very graceful. I think I spotted Daniela perhaps behind the mask. I couldn't see a lot of hair and mask on the other one, but thank you very much indeed for doing that for this morning. Now, this morning we are focusing on all things literary, and we start with some words from an author who is a member of the Talbot Heath community. She's a current parent here, but was a former pupil. And she writes as a profession and has published a number of books in the last few years. And I asked her to say a few words about why writing is so important to her.
Hi, I'm Fiona Woodyfield, aka Chloe James, and I am a published author and ex-pupil from Talbot Heath. So thank you very much, Mrs. Holloway, for asking me to talk to you all today about all things writing and books. My first book that was published last February, was The Jane Austen Dating Agency. And it's the story of Sophie, who is a young university graduate who supposedly has her ideal life. She's got a top job at a major fashion magazine in London, and it's all supposedly very glamorous, and she's young and intelligent and attractive, and actually the reality is very far from the dream, and she hates her job. It's selling advertising space in the back of the magazine, so it's not very glamorous at all. Her mum still treats her as though she's about 5 and tells her what to do all the time, and she's a complete dating disaster area because she has read far too many romantic novels when she was younger, and now she expects all men to be like Mr. Darcy, and that's, unfortunately, as we all know, is not the reality. So she joins a Jane Austen dating agency in the hope that she might meet the man of her dreams, and it has some rather comic results as she meets some familiar characters from Jane Austen's novels. I've actually written a sequel to the Jane Austen dating agency, which is going to be published this August. My latest book is Love in Lockdown, which was published on March the 4th. It came out in paperback, and it's available on Amazon as a paperback and will be in bookshops when they open again, but is also available as an ebook for 99p. It's a romantic comedy, like the Jane Austen dating agency. It's published under my pseudonym, which is Chloe James, or my pen name, whichever you prefer to call it. And it's the story of Jack and Sophia, who live in a block of flats, and they don't know each other at the beginning of the story. They're in their late 20s. You can see Jack up here lives above Sophia, and he's been told to isolate because unfortunately he's got kidney disease, and the whole story is set in the lockdown last March, the first lockdown. You remember the one with all the sunshine, and it was all a bit of a novelty, wasn't it then, to be told to stay in, and we weren't sure what to expect. And it had a very different feel from the later lockdowns that we've had, I feel. And so he's got to stay in, and he's feeling really lonely and isolated because his family live a long way away. And Sophia is a key worker. She works in a school, so she's still teaching, and her flatmate Erica is a midwife. And at the start of the story, Sophia goes out onto her balcony for the first clap for the NHS. Her flatmate Erica is out, and she isn't quite sure what to expect, because I don't think any of us were. You sort of thought on the first night where we were told to go outside and clap, we just thought, well, is anyone else going to clap? How do we know exactly when to start at 8 o'clock? And gradually there was this resounding sound of clapping coming from streets around, and it was really moving. And Sophia becomes quite overwhelmed by this and starts crying, and it's not a little bit of delicate sniffing, it's like really loud, embarrassing blubbing. And Jack, who's upstairs on his balcony, overhears and calls down to her and talks to her and tries to cheer her up. And this book is the story of their developing friendship. And the idea of the book is, I was actually thinking of another title, could have been Alone Together or Together Apart, which I think is very much a theme to this whole lockdown and to this whole pandemic, that people, although they've been apart because we weren't able to see each other, there's very much been a sense of community, a wartime spirit of fighting this aloneness and helping mental health by Zooms and talking to each other and doing each other's shopping. One reviewer wrote about Love in Lockdown. They said, "Together Apart feels less like a slogan and more like a battle cry in the midst of isolation and loneliness." And I wanted to write about love and love in general, because it's not just the love between Jack and Sophia, but of community, of each other, of our families. And I wrote in my book, when everything else stops, love is all that is left. It counts for everything, as it always did. In the key workers, the nurses, the hospital staff, the shop assistants, the bus and delivery drivers, everyone braving a common enemy for the sake of others. The other thing I wanted to talk about, as well as love of community in this book, was the power, as Mrs. Holloway was talking about on Assembly on Friday, the power of humour in adversity. And so I tried to put some comic elements in, such as the toilet roll shortage and the embarrassment when we first had to distance of crossing the road and smiling apologetically as you walk around people. And also Sophia's Uncle Jim is quite embarrassing in the book. There's lots of funny elements from that. And I'd like to read you a short extract from Love in Lockdown, where there's a scene where Sophia's sister, Jess, is getting married on Zoom. And she's obviously marrying her partner in the garden, but the vicar and all the guests are on Zoom. So there's rather a comic scene with the vicar in his back garden taking the service. So here we go. The vicar continues in a sonorous, booming voice. "Does any man know of any just cause or impediment why they should not be—" "Wait," calls Uncle Jim. "Oh no, I was worried this would happen," my mum laments. "Shh, Uncle Jim, you're not supposed to join in this bit." "There's a mouse," he says. Everyone peers at the screen, which happens to be trained on the Reverend Bumble, as he's the one speaking. And sure enough, in the scene behind him, there's a tiny little mouse, running so fast in the grass it looks as though it's on wheels. But before the vicar can do anything, a ginger cat legs it onto the scene and grabs it into his mouth and then tries to exit the garden by the nearest fence. "Oh!" gasped various people. "Tiddles, leave that mouse alone," shouts the vicar. Cats usually hang on to a mouse they've caught if they can, but I think this one is somewhat surprised. I can't blame him, as the vicar is waving his cassock at him, which is a pretty scary sight, because the cat immediately drops the mouse. It proceeds to run across the lawn again, where it's snapped up by a dog. Rather than running off with its prize, the spaniel sits holding the poor little mouse in its mouth. This mouse must be thinking it's having a really bad day. Meanwhile, on the screens, it's total pandemonium. Kids are laughing, people are offering helpful advice, mum's yelling, "Tell the dog to leave it." The bride and groom are doubled up with laughter. "Nell, leave," bellows the vicar. Fortunately, Nell is obviously of a biddable disposition and promptly drops the mouse, which, seemingly perfectly unharmed, scurries off into a nearby bush in relative safety. The vicar looks a bit shaken by all of this. "Sorry about that," he says casually, as though this sort of thing is commonplace. His face looms ridiculously close to the screen. "I will be having a serious word with my pets after the service. Now, where were we?" On a serious note, the other part of the book is that Jack and Sophia both suffer from serious illnesses. Jack has kidney disease and Sophia has epilepsy. And the thing I wanted to impart was, although this lockdown was really, really difficult for all of us because we had to stay in and weren't able to do what we wanted to do and couldn't see the people we cared about, I wanted to point out that for people who have long-term chronic illnesses, they often can't go out and do the things they want. Often they have to cancel plans at the last minute, and it can really impact on their feeling of isolation and loneliness, because people don't always understand how that feels if they don't have an illness. And that's part of Jack and Sophia's connection, because they both understand how each other feel. And that's what I love about writing. It's an amazing opportunity to write about the things that are important to you. Writing gives you a voice. It's a platform to talk about what's important to you, to highlight issues, whether it might be health, inequality, or just to help people feel less alone. And if your writing touches just one person and helps that first person feel that, yes, someone else knows how it feels, it's the most amazing feeling for you as an author. And it's also such an incredible opportunity to make a difference in this world. I've had messages from all over the globe thanking me for helping others to feel better during this lockdown, for spreading hope. Some people with illnesses have messaged me to say that no one else has understood so completely how that can feel until reading this book. And feedback like this means everything to me. This is why I write. So my advice would be to start writing. Keep a journal or a notebook and jot down anything, your feelings or what you've done each day or what's important to you. It's so good for mindfulness. You might find over several days that there's something that keeps coming up that's bothering you or is an issue, and you might want to talk to your family or friends about it. Or you might find that looking back, those issues don't seem to be so important anymore. And it gives you a chance to offload your emotions. Also, at the moment, we're living history. I want to document in Love and Lockdown how it really feels to live during a pandemic with the anti-vax and the masks, and how the silence was in the streets in the first lockdown, so that future generations to come would know how it felt. You've now got this amazing opportunity to write something about lockdown. You could write it about yourself or someone else or an imaginary character. This is your chance to write something from your own experience, which people could read in years to come. But my final piece of advice is to just write. Don't worry about what you're writing, just get the words down on paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can tidy it up. As a writer, I have to go over my words many times, correcting and polishing, cutting, and you can't do that until you've got your first words down. So get writing, and above all, enjoy it. It should be fun. And you never know what's going to come from it and who will read what you've put and what amazing things you can change in the world around you to make it a better place. So, happy writing.
So thank you very much to Mrs. Woodfield. And she has said if anybody has any questions and they'd like to ask her about her writing or her books, she's very happy for you to email me and I will forward them on to her. Now, I hope you have been inspired to write. And we have details of a writing competition. It's been organised by the GSA, the Girls' Schools Association, and it's open to all pupils from year 3 up to upper 6. And the topic that they have set is, what have we learnt from the pandemic that will influence our lives tomorrow? The deadline for it is after the Easter holidays, so you can see there at the end of April. So you have every opportunity in the next few weeks to get writing, pick up that pen or start typing on your iPad and get those ideas down. I'm sure you've got lots of things that you'd like to put forward. So posters all around the English department, and your English staff will talk to you about that. We've also been reading. So well done to everyone who took part in the Read for Good initiative. So thank you to all of the girls in Upper 3 who took part in the annual Read for Good reading challenge. Between them, they have read over 100 books and they have raised a superb £246 for the Read for Good children's charities. Each of the participants will receive a certificate, and 3 girls in Upper 3 deserve a special mention for their excellent efforts. They are as follows. Literary merit goes to Lilia Trickett in Upper 3 1P for her efforts in reading. Superb fundraising goes to Ella Reese in Upper 3 3P. And for reading the most books is Lila Edwards in Upper 3P. Each of the prize winners will receive a book token. Thank you to everyone who took part. And the Read for Good initiative at the school has nearly raised £20,000 since it was started at Talbot Heath a number of years ago. So can we congratulate all those Upper 3? Thank Mrs. Boyington. Well done, everybody. Great reading. Now that links in to our online library promotion. Let's have a look. If you haven't checked out our online library, please do so. Mrs. Hart has been sending out information. You can go online, you can read articles, information about the latest books. They've got reviews there, lots of things. So please have a look. Easter holidays coming up, perfect time to check it out. Now, I have a few other notices. I wanted to say thank you to the Eco team. So the Eco team, they have sourced a new outside bin completely made of recycled materials for the back entrance to school, as there was a lot of litter being dropped in the woods. And they'd like to thank the site staff for placing it and fixing it. They've also sourced some new bins for recycling in entrance 1, and these are also made out of 100% recycled materials. And this will provide opportunity for you to recycle things like pens, chocolate wrappers, contact lenses, and crisp packets in school again. So the Upper 6 will be sending out more information this week. Can the Form Eco Champions look out for the information and encourage everyone to recycle? So thank you very much, Eco teams. Great work going on there. Right, as we head into our final week before the Easter break, let's go over to Reverend Burke.
Good morning, and my thanks to Mrs. Woodyfield. I will avoid taking weddings by Zoom. I learnt something very special this morning. Now, as a prayer this morning, I'm going to read a verse from a poem entitled Prayer by Carol Ann Duffy, who was, until quite recently, the Poet Laureate. Some days, although we cannot pray, a prayer utters itself. So a woman will lift her head from the sieve of her hands and stare at the minims sung by a tree, a sudden gift. Amen.
Amen. Have a super final week, everybody. Bye. See you Thursday.